All right, so this chapter over culture is going to be really quick, but I do want to include it because this content is not in your textbook and it is going to be on your midterm. Okay, so be sure that you get some notes out. I apologize in advance if you can hear my baby laughing in the background. All right, so we can skip over that. These, you don't need to watch. You can if you want. When I teach in person, I usually show these two. The first one is, I think, a really good example of microaggressions that are very common and that people think are harmless, but they can really have an impact on people. And then the SNL Welcome to Hell skit is about, when we talk about culture, I kind of like to attack it as diversity more. So yes, that includes culture, ethnicity, and race, but I think it also includes, I like to talk about it of us just engaging with different, different diverse groups, which could include if, people with disabilities, socioeconomic status, religion, stuff like that, different demographics. So the second one is a skit from SNL, as you see, and it is kind of bringing up some issues that women can have in a silly way. And with class, I kind of talk about if they did that in a good job, or if it just kind of makes a mockery out of real issues that women are dealing with. All right, so this is the part that I want you to take notes over. And again, this is not in your textbook, but it is on your midterm, okay? So how do we respond to diversity? These are kind of the things that we need to keep in mind when we are responding to diversity. Again, being engaged with people of diverse backgrounds, diverse, different things that make them who they are. So we need to resist ethnocentric bias in general. Ethnocentrism is thinking that our culture is the best, is superior to others. And I know that sounds very easy for us to do in theory, but sometimes it can be harder than we realize to not have that ethnocentrism, okay? So the process of responding to diversity. Before we begin this, I would just ask that y'all go in with an open mind. Again, sorry if y'all can hear my daughter. My nanny's playing with her. I would just ask that y'all go in this with an open mind, and please don't write this stuff off like, oh, I would never be in that step. I would never do that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but as always, I ask that you reflect over yourself and your experiences as we talk about this content, and just consider that this process is very common and it doesn't mean you're a bad person, okay? So the first step that people might go through is resistance. Resistance is where they completely resist the idea that that's a thing, that there are people that believe that there are cultures that do that, whatever, okay? For example, I know people who are asexual can have a lot of people just completely resist their identity as being asexual. They're like, no, that's not a thing. There's not actually people that don't desire sexual relationships, and they write that off. So resistance is just like, you're not even acknowledging that that is a real thing. The next step is tolerance. Tolerance. So with tolerance, we acknowledge that that is real and that that is existing, but there's still judgment. There is still judgment with tolerance. And think about that. That makes sense, right? Like, think about what it means to tolerate someone. No one wants to be tolerated. That's just like, I'll put up with you, I guess. You're welcome, right? Like that, no one wants to be tolerated. So with tolerance, we're no longer in resistance, right? And you're going to see we go further down. These change incrementally. There's still judgment, but we're acknowledging that that is real, that there are people that live that lifestyle, that there are people that believe in a religion where that's a tradition or whatever it may be, okay? After tolerance is understanding. Understanding. So in understanding, we have dropped the judgment. We have dropped the judgment. We are coming from a place of curiosity. We are truly coming from a place of genuine curiosity, and we are engaging in answering and asking questions. Or I guess I should say that flipped, asking and answering questions. Okay, so understanding, truly, you are just trying to learn more. It's when I say true curiosity, that's what I mean. It's not asking questions to use them as a spectacle or anything like that. It's genuine curiosity of wanting to know more. And then is respect. Respect is exactly what it sounds like. You don't have to know everything about that group of people, that situation, that culture, whatever it may be, in order to respect it, but you know a little bit enough to respect that. It doesn't mean that you necessarily agree. It doesn't mean that you are going to change the way you live your life necessarily, but you respect that there are people with cultures who do this tradition and this is important to them, or whatever it may be. And then is participation. So this is kind of I think a fun one to talk about. You might not necessarily reach participation, so just keep that in mind. But participation is where you, as it says, participate in that group or that culture. Okay, now this is not always possible, so just keep that in mind. You might not do it and it might not be possible. So we literally can't become a different race. You might not become a different religion. But let's say you have a friend who's Catholic, and people who are Catholic, a lot of them celebrate Lent, where they don't eat meat on Fridays, and they give something up or do something, I believe. And so that, let's say your friend can't have meat, and so you're like, oh, well, we can order a cheese pizza. I don't need to get, and they're like, no, get whatever you want. And you're like, no, it's fine. Out of respect for them, you are participating. That doesn't mean that you are converting to Catholicism, but you are participating in that culture. Let me give you another example. I used to listen to a morning show where the female co-host on there was adopting 2 children from Haiti. And she was talking about their adoption process and what the adoption agency and counselors told her and her husband. And they said, once you adopt the children and they come live in America full time, it's a good idea to, let them pick some traditions to adopt, and you incorporate those into your family. That way they can still keep some of their Haitian culture. Okay. So that would be them participating. Participation is not the same thing as cultural appropriation. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is, and if you don't download the PowerPoints, that's fine, but you're going to need to go download them or just type in that link. I want you to watch that and pause this, and then I'm going to explain what that video is and how I went through the process of responding to diversity when I watched that for the first time. So I'm going to give you a few seconds, pause this video, go open this PowerPoint or click on that link and watch the video. Okay, so the first time I saw that, I went through the process of responding to diversity. I'm not making this up. I can't, I can't make this up. So I saw it going around Facebook and people were sharing it and were like, oh my gosh, this brought tears to my eyes, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't go through resistance because it was right in front of me. There was nothing to resist that was a real thing. I know a lot of things can be made up, but I didn't go through resistance. I was like, it's right there. But I did start at tolerance. I was a little judgmental. People were saying like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. That brought tears to my eyes. And for me, I was like, it's not really the response I had. So I was a little judgmental. I'm going to be honest with y'all. Again, I don't think we as humans are immune from this. As much as I think I'm very open-minded, the first time I saw this, I went through these stages. I went through tolerance, where I was like, that was weird, a little judgmental. So then I immediately went to our trusty friend, but not a credible source, but a good starting off point, Wikipedia. And I learned that that is a haka, okay? It is a tradition that is done in New Zealand. And it is, and I don't know everything about it, but basically, and they do it a lot. It's not just at weddings. I've seen students do a haka for a teacher who was retiring, who they respected. They do it at the rugby games, the New Zealand, I think at the home games, they do it before every game. So it's a tradition that can be done in a lot of different contexts. And I learned that their energy and them like sticking their tongues out and bulging their eyes is on purpose. It is to make them, way back in the days when they would go into battle, they wanted to be intimidating. And for this situation, they were doing, their friends and family were doing the haka at their wedding for kind of to show like, we will fight for your marriage, we are here for you, showing support and love. And so once I understood that and understood the symbolism, I moved to respect. And I really respected that. And now I can watch it and get tears in my eyes. Now I understand how monumental that probably was for their friends and family at their wedding to do that for them. So something I want to remind you of, and I know I've kind of talked around this, but I like to emphasize this because I know in this day and age, a lot of us want to think that we are so open-minded, and I am not saying that you're not. But we are human beings. Sometimes we are faced with things that are a little weird, right? And that's okay if we think they're a little weird. They're different. Think about things in your culture, or especially I'm fascinated with religion, and I don't share my specific religious views, but, or my political ones. Those are the two things that are like super off limits for me to discuss with my students. Y'all can talk about them, but I am not atheist. I do believe in God. And so I'm saying this as a person who does follow a specific religion. But if you think of religion, all the symbolism and the things that are like the traditions, if we weren't raised with that, we would probably think it's pretty weird. Okay. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Give yourself a little bit of a break. Now, where this is bad is if we don't move down the line. If we don't hopefully move down to understanding and hopefully respect. We won't always move to participation, and that's okay. But it's bad if we stay at resistance, if we stay at tolerance. That's when this is bad. Okay? But I just want y'all, I think that now, and I know that everybody is, wants to be as woke as possible, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We need to be aware. And as a white cisgender female, I have a lot that I need to learn. I will be the first to say that. But I also think that some people in society, or society as a whole, doesn't almost let us be human anymore, and have, like, if we don't accept something with open arms, the instant we're exposed to it, we're closed-minded, terrible people. And I just don't think that's fair. I really don't. I know that's not fair. So give yourself a break. And again, if you start with one of these that aren't the best at tolerance, that's okay. But it's not okay if you stay at tolerance and you don't push yourself to move to understanding, and then push yourself to hopefully move to respect. Okay? So I'm fascinated with this. I did not come up with these steps, but it's not in your textbook, but I think it's really important to teach, and that's why I teach it every semester, because I think this is something that we all go through, and I think it's really important for y'all to keep in mind.